take it from there.
Cool.
All right, let me go to that.
And I should turn my light on here.
You can go ahead. We should be
I probably have like 30 things in my menu bar at this point. Takes me like forever to find the thing.
All right, we are live. I want to make sure.
Hey, everybody.
Just going to make sure that everybody sees us on the actual stream here.
Let me,
there we go. Yep, I am seeing us. Perfect.
Elgato Control Center.
Right. Chris, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, let there be light. How's it going?
Good, man. I'm going to see you a little later today because we have like a regular gathering, but this is for members of TimeCrafting Trust Premium. It's a rarity to get Chris Bailey to do this kind of thing.
Oh,
last time we did something like this where we talked about productivity, just the two of us, where we actually saw each other, and it was like in a public setting, would have been in Ottawa in a diner where people could have watched us. If only they did back then. If only they knew who we were.
Maybe Zach's Diner has some security footage.
Is it still there? Is Zach's Diner still there?
Yes, it is. And right now, well, we moved back to Ottawa, as you know, and we're living one block away from Elgin Street, and the famous Elgin Street Diner, which never closes, including on Christmas, New Year's, any day of the week, any night of the day, any hour of the day, you can go get a coffee. Yeah, do some writing.
Is it diner quality coffee or is it good quality coffee?
It's good.
Oh,
very
wow,
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, love the cup. For those of you that are watching this live or the recording of it, it is a retro CBC logo.
They make good merch.
Yes, they do. I love that old logo because that's like that's the old school stuff. So
they even put the CBC words inside on the bottom. So you have a nice little surprise after you finish your drink. Well, I'm drinking green tea, so it's not that interesting. But
what is going to be interesting is getting this conversation done for not just the people who are in the community, they're going to have access to this early, but also to the general podcast audience, because this is going to come out shortly around the time, like after the book is out, I think is when your team asked me to put it out.
Geez.
They did. That's okay. Hey, I hear it. It's funny. I just had I've had a few conversations lately where it's like, could you have it come out at this time? And it's not unusual. Let's put it that way. So Chris, this is how this goes. First off, we have some people that will be in might be some questions that come in from the audience as we do this on the live stream, which I think would be great.
I love it.
We already have a couple of members that are watching this live, so this is awesome.
Hey guys.
And I have some questions, obviously, about the new book. But the way this goes, we only need about a half an hour.
All right.
And you will introduce yourself. So it's been a while since you've been on the show. But now the introduction is done by the guest. Primarily, it's twofold. Number one, it's a nice hook. People know who's going to be on the show. Secondly, and probably even more importantly, for most people, it lets me hear how they pronounce their name, so I don't have to remember how to pronounce it. Now, yours is not going to be hard to pronounce.
Churs Bali.
But that's how we do it. So the way it goes, and then we, in post, we'll do like my introduction and same thing with the outro. So what we'll do is you'll do your intro and then we'll just get right into the conversation. Admittedly, I've had some time to go through the book, but I had some problems getting it on my Kindle because of my multiple Kindle accounts. I do have it on my iPad though, which is like the least likely way I like to read.
We actually just got
Did you get the galley? You got print versions?
The finished copy.
Nice.
Isn't that? I usually don't show off the.
No, it looks good.
It's like, you know how when you interview somebody and they have their book in the background.
Well, didn't a bunch of us that we're in a group together suggest that you get like that blown up and as a poster by yourself?
That is like antithetical to my being, but I love. I guess just a few folks are watching, so it's not too self-promotional.
No, no. Yeah.
But I love this package. See the little penguin there?
Little penguin.
Penguin is life. So I honestly, to hold this one in my hands feels different than the others. It's
really, this is book 4, 3.
It depends if you want to count the Audible thing.
Right. Fair. Yeah.
The Audible original. Arden counts it. For me, I'm like a purist, and I feel like I need to be able to hold the product in my hand. And we do have like a physical copy of it, but I want to be able to flip through the pages to call something a book.
Yeah. Yeah, Arden,
What do
by
you
the
think?
way, Arden, by the way, for those that are
Oh
watching
yeah,
this live,
it's my wife.
it's your wife.
What do you think? Is an
I think
Audible original a book?
who, um, I would say, oof, I don't think I'd count it as a book. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
You're right. I think it needs to be something you can hold on
Flip
to. It'd
through.
be the argument would be like if I released just an audio version of like something like would that be a book? May I don't think so. I think there's
Yeah.
yeah. Will you ever do the Audible? Do they ever allow you to take that Audible original and turn it into a book? Probably
We
not.
did
Like a
retain
physical.
the print rights.
Ah, there you go.
But
So
I don't know. I
it'd be
don't know if I
interesting.
really want to.
Yeah, there's something about having. It's kind of like some of the courses that I have that I could very easily like move from LinkedIn Learning to something else. Like I could reframe them a bit or whatever. But there is
Mm.
something about them living there that gives
Yeah.
them that kind of yeah. It's
And
interesting.
and that's the thing. Like I designed the Audible original for the fact that it'll be an Audible original.
Right.
So like there's guided meditations in it. There's like I don't know how well that would translate necessarily.
It's true.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that it's for that platform. There is some kind of scarcity around that as well, which you don't
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Oh,
By the way,
I forgot to ask,
yep,
are you posting the video?
we will be posting the video as an unlisted video on YouTube only for TimeCrafting Trust members,
Oh,
premium
okay.
members.
So
So
basically I'm asking like, should I move that painting?
no, that painting is fine.
All right.
That's where,
The
if I recall,
Renoir.
Chris, all your paintings just are on the floor in your house.
Yeah. Down
Just
to earth
leave
kind of
them on the
fella.
floor, propped up against the wall.
I actually have not very little on the walls here.
Yes, yeah, that's been discussed in some of our other discussions. By the way, just to highlight a couple of members that are in the chat right now. Edward is coming to us from Palm Springs, and Joe is from Maryland.
Nice.
Joe is a long-standing member of TimeCrafting Trust Premium, and Edward is a fairly recent member, but he is someone. Oddly enough, I have not met Joe in person over the many years that he's been keeping up with the work that I do. But I have met Edward, and I just met him like not too long ago in person when I was in Phoenix. So again, kudos to those two gentlemen that are in the chat right now, and anyone else who's watching live or the recording. All right, so I want to be respectful of time. Plus, we have to get our lunches in before we sit down and then have another conversation that's a little less public a little later on. But Chris, so the introduction you need to say is, "Hi, I'm Chris Bailey, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy." And then we go into it. Are you ready?
I will say that.
Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Chris Bailey, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with the one, the only Mike Vardy.
There we go. We get a little tease intro that we've never quite had before. And it's funny, as we're recording this for our TimeCrafting Trust Premium members who have early access to the podcast, one of our members is saying that I just alluded to the fact that I've never had a chance to meet the Joe in person before. We'll get together one day. It's great to get together with Chris here again. This is your, I believe, third appearance on the program.
Wow.
With the, with the Productivity Project being the first time, then Hyperfocus being the second time. Now we are talking about how to calm your mind. And if you're a TimeCrafting Trust Premium member, Chris already showcased the beautiful cover and the physical aspect of the book, which it looks great. It looks absolutely great.
It's still so fresh in my mind because these physical copies of the book arrived yesterday as we record this. And for some reason, and I think it's because of the journey that led to this, I don't know, product, but I was going to say product, but it feels like more than that to me. I just feel like it's just more significant in my own life. Like when I look at the lessons that are inside of this one, and not to bash the other books, that's not my intention at all. Because those were the journeys that I went through at the time in terms of focusing more deeply, becoming more productive. This kind of looks at productivity in a different way, in a deeper way, where we go into the structure of our life and our work and really dissect what productivity means, how we can get there, how we can become more focused and engaged. Man, I feel like a walking, talking promotional thing for the book at this point, but I'm just pumped by this book.
What's interesting is you talk about the journey, and it is fascinating when I mention, the idea of the Productivity Project, which we met before we met when that book was just, barely an idea that was coming along. And then it goes to hyper focus, which is a channeling of that focus so that you can be more productive, and recognizing the different types of focus and how to leverage it. And then, but now we're into this level of calm and tranquility to a degree, and even contentedness. And I'm wondering, you know, for those that have followed your work before to this point, they're like, where does it, like in the Uber, where is it? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
And why did you go here for this particular book?
Yeah, this was a tougher journey than the others. You know, in terms of hyperfocus, it was a process of becoming distracted, figuring out the research and how I could overcome that. The productivity project, when we were having lunch at Zach's Diner in lovely, well, it's rainy today here in Ottawa. Yeah, that was before those days even. That was kind of a year-long experiment to go through all the productivity advice out there, separate what works from what doesn't. This new project on Calm is not really, I've never really found it an attractive endpoint.
Right.
It's not a sexy productivity hack. And so I've never really been drawn to it. But unfortunately, there was a period a few years ago where I fell deep into Calm's opposite, which is anxiety. Anxiety is the opposite of calm. They actually exist on a spectrum with one another, the research shows. And I found that I was at this point where I had these racing, these uncontrollable thoughts. I was just reactive on autopilot mode to what was happening around me. I was restless. I was on edge a lot of the time. And I didn't really realize it until this phenomenon of anxiety in my life erupted into a full-blown panic attack on stage in front of about 100 people. And I remember at the time just being on stage in this fight, flight, or freeze mode, just half wanting to, run off the stage, like kind of like one of those shows where somebody just kind of walks into the ocean and then you see them that's what I wanted to do in the moment. But I remember the distinct feeling after this talk, thinking, oh my gosh, something needs to change here. I didn't really realize I was anxious at the time until it boiled over. I didn't realize I was burnt out at the time without it boiling over. I was exhausted, cynical, unproductive, and just totally depleted. I think, and this is not, again, to put down the advice that I was giving before this. I think we actually need productivity now more than ever before, because we need to be able to live and work deliberately in the circumstances that we found ourselves in. But at the same time, when we don't replenish and build up our capacity for being productive in the first place, that's when we get to a point of burnout. That's when we get to a point of anxiety. That's when we get to a point of not being able to manage ourselves. And that's where I found myself. And so I'm fortunate. I'm grateful actually for the journey that this panic attack set me on, even though it was uncomfortable and awkward at the time. It's now led to a lot of lessons learned that I hope other people can benefit from.
I wonder, as I was going through the book, and we've had chances to converse outside of this, is this idea of, we live in a world, especially I would say the Western world, about achievement. Achievement's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I know that I was actually had a social media exchange with a friend of mine who was asking about meditation. And he said, how do I know when I'm doing it right? Like, how do I, it wasn't like he was saying, how do I win or achieve? Like, how can I check it off? Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges with Calm, I would imagine, right? Is that, I mean, the other work that you've dove into before this, there is this level of, I can check this off, I can achieve this, I can accomplish this. Yeah. But there is no, to me at least, and I'd love to hear when you're, especially with the research, because you do a lot of research, like you dig deep into this stuff, this idea of achieving or accomplishing Calm. There's almost like this, they seem to be disparate ideas, or this idea of like, you can't accomplish Calm, or I'm going to win the battle against, the battle for Calm. Like, how do you correlate that? And how do you help someone who is so driven by achievement and accomplishment to recognize that Calm is not only something that they need, but it's not something that they can necessarily check off on a to-do list?
Yeah, it's more of an arrival. It should be our natural state. And so if you're just sitting there, not really tending to any conversation, you should feel calm, right? You should feel as though there isn't anything to worry about. There's no impending doom. You should be able to find the presence and the peace of mind to engage with whatever happens to be in front of you and whomever happens to be in front of you. And I think the key here is to realize that calm is on the same spectrum as anxiety. And this is what one of the remarkable things about exploring the subtler things that make this profound effect on our productivity, calm being one of them. And to realize the extent to which calm can help us with our productivity, we just have to look at its opposite with anxiety. If I asked you, Mike, let's say you're doing a talk in front of a couple thousand people, and 15 minutes before you go on stage, I ask you to read something that I wrote or some journal article. There's no way in hell you're going to be able to read this thing, because your mind will be in that anxious state. And anxiety has this exact same effect on our mind, on our cognitive capacity all day, every day. The closer we are to that anxious side of the calm spectrum, we're a fish in water, right? We don't realize that our mental state is what it is because we're so immersed inside of it. Our thoughts and our thought patterns are nested within this structure of anxiety. But when they're nested within a structure of calm, that's when we're on vacation. That's when we're, a 1 week in on a Dominican beach, just kind of putting our feet up. And we have that deliberateness on the side of calm. We have that capacity for focus on whatever it is in front of us. We don't need productivity advice, if we can bring a capacity of presence with whatever and whomever we're with. And I think that's the key here is calm gives us this capacity for focus on whatever it is that we're doing in the moment. And it shouldn't be an endpoint. It should be our always point. It should be our natural state that lies underneath everything we do and everything that we are. We should be unflappable. And luckily, there are these concrete strategies we can invest in order to get ourselves there.
And that leads us to a really great question from a member of the TimeCrafting Trust Premium community right out of the gate. So how did you transition from your panic state to calm? There's got to be one of those. What was the first strategy maybe that you tapped into that you feel maybe, was it a series of them or was there one in particular that kind of helped you?
Well, honestly, at the start of this journey, and I hate that I have to give this answer, but I had no clue what to do. I really, really didn't know because I was turning to a lot of the advice out there on burnout, on anxiety, and I truly found that it wasn't helping me. I was meditating. I was going to the spa with my wife, Art, and I was ordering copious amounts of takeout on the road in order to treat myself. And I still found that this anxiety had the space to erupt. And that was one of the most remarkable things I think about this journey that I went down. There's a lot of good advice out there, but and this goes back to the productivity project that we were chatting about a bit earlier. The ratio of good to bad productivity advice, it's most of it, maybe 60 to 70% of it is good. I would say, it makes us back time, and it doesn't always, but sometimes we feel more in control, our head is clearer, that sort of thing. With anxiety, the ratio is kind of flipped, where there is so much fluff out there, where when you look at the actual scientific literature on these ideas, they don't map on top of what is being talked about in articles. 8 ways to find calm this holiday season, and that sort of thing. And make your 2023 the calmest year yet. You don't see many journal articles referenced at the bottom of these. So that was the first place that I turned to, is what is the actual academic literature on calm? And the fascinating thing that I found was there isn't much of it. There is actually very little research. There's a lot on anxiety, but the connection that I've made in the book is we have to see calm as anxiety's opposite. And there have been a few studies that found that anxiety is not a spectrum that goes from highly anxious to no anxiety. We can go past the point of no anxiety, which kind of resides in the middle of the spectrum, all the way down to a state of high calmness, where we become less reactive and our mind is less agitated. Those are kind of the two factors that determine where we are. We relate to our thoughts in a more positive fashion as well. And so I don't know if this answers the question, but there isn't a lot of research on calm. That was the fascinating thing, is I had to dig quite deep in order to find it. But luckily we can accomplish much of what we're setting out to do by looking at this concept of anxiety and working our way down that spectrum.
I wonder if for you, knowing you the way I do, that digging in and looking was a form of
therapy,
leaning into calm. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just, it's, you know, and what I imagine, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on this, is this idea that there's not a lot, like you said, there's not a lot of research around calm. Mm-hmm. It's such a qualitative thing that it seems hard to quantify, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas other areas, and I'm not saying anxiety is like this, but other areas of productivity per se is very quantifiable. In fact, you discuss like the idea of productivity advice, 70%, 30%. I would almost wonder if we looked at what productivity advice is gearing towards quantitative productivity versus qualitative productivity.
Yeah.
I wonder what that ratio would look like, because to me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is the idea of the level, the relative ability for you to either maintain or find calm will have a direct correlation to the quality of what you're able to produce. And the skews, I would imagine, the more anxious you get, and you talk about this in the book, about the idea of the mindset of more, you tend to lean more towards anxious. So more leads to more anxiety, not more calm, right?
Yeah. And this is what researchers call an acquisition mentality. And so when we're always wanting more of what we have, we can never truly savor what we're doing in the moment. And savoring, in addition to that acquisition mentality, was another fascinating topic that I had the opportunity to explore. And that's the lovely thing about, writing a book is you can kind of go where you want and follow the most helpful threads in whatever research you're coming across. Savoring is actually a science. And so savoring is the process of converting positive experiences into positive emotions. And so, I'm drinking a delicious cup of jasmine tea here in my CBC mug, as folks in the TimeCrafting, what's it called?
TimeCrafting Trust Premium, which will have a link to the membership in the show notes.
There it is. Yeah. Link in the show notes, friends. I'm drinking this cup of jasmine tea, but just because I'm drinking it doesn't mean that I'll enjoy it. We all have these delicious meals that we scarf down distractedly in front of a TV or, in a restaurant with somebody we can't stand. And so we're really not enjoying things. And then we have the wonderful experiences that we actually pay attention to, where we convert those positive experiences into positive emotions. And the fascinating thing about savoring is the wealthier somebody is, the less of a capacity they have to actually savor their lives. And men actually have less of an ability to savor their lives than women do. I'm not sure why that's the case, but with wealth, it's because when the more we acquire, the more we wish to acquire, and it's more that drives us forward instead of a goal. Wanting more without an endpoint in mind, any goal without an endpoint in mind is really just a fantasy, right? We have to have that. Again, this is connecting the qualitative with the quantitative. We need to have that endpoint in mind when we're seeking more of something, because there are an infinite number of currencies in our life. There's, of course, money. There's, of course, status. There's, of course, these forms of currencies that are more traditionally valued in cultures like the ones we're inside of. If you have more followers than somebody else, you're seen as more impressive than somebody else. But there are other currencies too. What about happiness? It's something that we forget about. And I think happiness is what drives a lot of us to acquire more of what we have. But I think, when we look at that value that the modern world has, the last place we should be looking for happiness advice is the modern world. The modern world is not happy. The modern world is not present. The modern world cannot savor what it has. We blow past the most beautiful experiences of our life without so much as even paying attention to them, let alone enjoying and deeply savoring them. And this is actually connected with dopamine, the neurochemical that, is one where I think we have to take a shot for every time it's mentioned almost, because so many people are talking about it. That's actually a less understood idea as well when you look at the actual research. But it's interesting that when you look at the neurochemical underpinnings of our acquisition mentality, when you look at the neurochemical underpinnings of our constant craving for more, it's dopamine. It's dopamine that drives us forward. Dopamine even has the nickname, the molecule of more, by some researchers into this topic, because it drives so much of that. But when you look at the chemicals that are active in our mind when we're actually enjoying an experience, which is, by the way, what life is all about, right? It's savoring a conversation. It's enjoying a meal at Zach's Diner in Ottawa. It's enjoying a cup of delicious jasmine tea. That's happiness, right? It's in savoring. When you look at the chemicals that are active in that mode, it's serotonin, which makes us feel proud. It's oxytocin, which makes us feel connected. It's endorphins that gives us this rush to do something. And those are anti-correlated with dopamine as well.
It's interesting because, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about my coffee ritual in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
I'm a night owl. But and anyone who's been following my work for a while definitely knows this. But
we all know this, Mike.
Yes, we all know this by now. It's not new. But it's funny because my wife and I have two very different relationships to coffee. I'll use that because it's also subjective too. Like, I think that's the other big thing too, is what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander necessarily. So we have two separate coffee areas in our house. My wife has hers upstairs, which is like literally Costco beans, ground up, blah, blah. Coffee for her is more or less a caffeine delivery device. Like, there's no real savoring of the making of the coffee. However, she will make a cup of coffee so she can have it while she's reading, which she is safe. So there's a companion element to it. Now, for me, I will literally spend 4 to 5 minutes making a cup of coffee using different implementations. And to me, like, there is, which I didn't realize as you're talking about it, I'm like, this is probably one of the reasons why I'm able to, despite the fact that I'm a night owl, start my day in more of a calm state.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally fueling it with that ritual that promotes calm. So I wonder.
And calm mornings do lead to deliberate days.
Yeah.
And, the fascinating thing about what you just mentioned, sorry, I know you're about to ask
this is good.
something,
Let's go.
This brings something to mind. We can savor the past and the future. That was one of the most remarkable things that I had the chance to encounter. There are a lot of ways of savoring the present. We can luxuriate in the present. Think of a cat in the sun. We can practice Thanksgiving. We can feel grateful for things. We can marvel at something. We can marvel at the ocean, the sky, a beautiful forest or some nature. But we can actually savor the future as well. It counts as savoring because we do it in the present. And that's called, we've all done it, anticipation. And so when we count down the days to an event, for an example, we actually have been shown to enjoy an event more when it does happen, when we count down the days, because this active anticipation, researchers, they describe it as creating effective memory traces in our mind, kind of paths that are faded in our mind, that we can walk down once again when we experience something. And after anticipating something, our mind perceives it as though we're experiencing that thing for a second time, which I find to be absolutely fascinating. So when you have that ritual around coffee, when you have that ritual around, making your matcha green tea in the morning or walking to a coffee shop across town, that actually leads you to enjoy something more. Savoring the past is another thing that I love to do. And you know the name for that?
Reminiscing.
Reminiscence. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Good work. 10 podcast points for you. But so looking through old photos is a great example of this.
I read my journal every New Year's Day, January 1st. I read the entire journal, whatever journal entries I did over last year.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. There's this quote from Jessamine West who said, "Those who journal get to live life twice."
Oh, I love that. It's so true.
It is.
Because of reminiscence.
Yep.
And yeah, we enjoy our life becomes more meaningful when we reminisce on it. And so savoring, makes us more calm, but it also makes us more deliberate, and we enjoy experiences more. It's one of my favorite things. And one tactical thing people can do, make a savor list if you find this to be a challenge. And if you're driven a lot by this acquisition mentality, if you have a lot of dopamine driven behavior, like engaging with a lot of digital distraction, this might be more of a challenge or a chore than it is something that produces satisfaction. But that's exactly the point of doing it, is we can, savoring is actually a skill we can get better at. But make a list of everything that you love to savor, or that you used to savor before your mind was more distracted and overwhelmed and maybe even more anxious. Everything from the tea to the coffee to the wine fueled cribbage nights with your wife, whatever it might be. Capture it all, pick one thing every day and enjoy it. It's great.
What I love about savoring too is it is almost it's permissiveness to be present and yet savor things that live outside of the present moment. So you are present, but you're looking at, like you said, the past and the future. And what I also like about it is no one says savor the minute, they say savor the moment. Like, so moments are, no one, like you saying make a list and stuff like that adds a quantitative element to a degree. Like there's 14 things or whatever, and that's fine. But it's moments, right? And moments are, it's weird because a lot of people will say, and I know in Chip and Dan Heath's book, The Power of Moments, I don't think they ever really define, like, this is how long a moment is, because it's so subjective. And we're going to get to a question here in a second from Edward in the community, but the idea of, in your research, was there an objective definition, or was there a way for people to, quote, know that they are living in calm or in that state? Because we all know that humans need both certainty and uncertainty. There's that balance there. But there's a comfort in feeling a certain way or being in a certain way, so that you can grow from that point and to have that validation. So did you find anything like that, or are there ways to maybe try to not manipulate, but lean into it a little bit more?
It changes so much that I think it's impossible to measure overall. When you look at anxiety comes opposite. We have state anxiety and trait anxiety. So trait anxiety is what produces anxiety disorders, that sort of thing. It's not something I focus a lot in the book on,
right?
Because I'm not a psychotherapist. But it's that state anxiety that is brought on by the events of our life that it's impossible to avoid. Right? We all have stressful moments in our life. And if you went back through time and removed every single stressful moment from your life, you would eliminate pretty much all of the meaning from your life as well. Your wedding was probably stressful.
Yep.
It's also probably incredibly enjoyable, hopefully.
Well, and you remember the enjoyable parts more than, say, the stressful parts in those moments.
Yeah.
Whereas in other situations, you remember the stress more than the not stress, right? And there's use stress and
Yeah.
regular, like, so there's,
Yeah.
and you can't identify what those are necessarily at that point in time either.
Yeah, and there's a great quote from Sonia Lyubomirsky where she has said that vacations are never perfect, but we remember them as perfect. It's this rose-colored glasses effect, and we need the meaning that stress provides. We don't want to remove our weddings and our vacations and our births of welcoming kids into our life, and that sort of thing. So we need a bit of anxiety, I would even say, because we need stress. And it's that distinction that you made, that dichotomy between eustress and distress, where eustress is this stress that makes us grow, and another kind of distinction that I think is worth making is between acute stress and chronic stress. And so chronic stress it's the bad kind, right? If acute stress is the once-off traffic jam on the way to the airport, chronic stress is the constant traffic we experience every damn day on our way to work. It's the irreconcilable feelings we have when we just look at it's the stress we experience when we look at our bank account and just get frustrated every time. Chronic stress is what causes burnout. And that was an important connection that I personally made in this journey, is understanding what burnout really is.
Yeah, because you didn't know you were burnt out, did you?
I had no idea. And it wasn't until I took the Maslach burnout inventory. Christina Maslach is probably the world's foremost researcher on the subject of burnout. I had the chance to chat with her a few times over the course of writing the book, and read every single journal article that she's ever written as well, to connect those and filter them through my own perspective. And one misconception that I had was what burnout even is. We think of exhaustion as burnout, just when we're totally depleted. But looking at the research, exhaustion only is a third of what it means to be burnt out. There are two other factors that we must have in order to be burnt out at the same time. We need exhaustion, right? That feeling of just being totally depleted. But we also need to be cynical. This negativity that we have, regardless of whatever it is that we're doing. And we also need to feel deeply, profoundly unproductive. This sense of inefficacy is a third attribute of burnout. And the research shows that the more chronic stress we have in our work and our life, mostly our work, burnout has been traditionally defined as a workplace phenomenon, though of course it's impossible to distinguish between these environments as time goes on. It's fascinating. There are 6 areas of our work that contribute to this phenomenon of burnout, but it's the chronic stress that comes from it all that contributes to this exhaustion, cynicism, and feeling unproductive. So those 3 factors are a great sign to look at these 6 areas, but it comes back to chronic stress, this stress that often we choose to pay attention to ourselves, not realizing that we're engaging with stress in the first place sometimes.
As we get close to wrapping up, I want to make sure that I address the questions that are coming from the premium members of our community. Edward asks, if anxiety is to chaos as calm is to focus, where are we most productive and why? That's an interesting question.
If anxiety is to chaos as calm is to focus.
Now that's the first part. I think there's 2 questions there. Is that true? Did you find that to be true? I'll tell you that, it's interesting because you guys know that are watching this live that are members, and Chris, you know this because I talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe all the time. Vision said, there's this quote where he says, humans are odd. They think that chaos and order are different things, but they're not. And then the idea of balance is Dr. Fate's another example where people say, oh, he works for the Lords of Order. And he goes, no, he works for balance. He doesn't work for order, because without chaos, you can't have order, and without order, you can't. Like they're almost two sides of the same coin. So my question, I guess that's an adjunct. Yeah. Is anxiety to chaos, and is calm to focus? Are they like? And then if that's the case, where are we most productive and why?
Well, I think calm gives us a capacity for chaos. So that would be the connection that I would make.
Okay.
Is calm is the ground that we should be standing on, where regardless of what our situation actually is, we feel as though we're engaged with it and that we don't have anything to worry about. So, I look at calm in this book from that mental state where how many thoughts are tugging at our attention in the moment that are, there's task related thoughts, which are about the thing we're engaging with, and task unrelated thoughts that are, oh, wait, I should worry about this, or I should remember this cringeworthy thing I said 8 years ago. I think calm gives us a capacity for chaos. And ultimately, with a calm mind, it doesn't really matter if things are chaotic or if things are order and they have a place. It's like the clouds in the sky. I start and I want to get it right. I start the book off with a quote, and that quote from Pema Chodron is, "You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather." And I think this quote encapsulates what this kind of calm means, where things happen, things that are stressful happen, shit happens. It's what we need, the mental capacity to deal with it all and not be bothered by it. And that's what calm gives us.
Chris, there's a lot that we weren't able to cover during our conversation today. But that could be said for when we've chatted about hyperfocus and the productivity. Like the depth and breadth, even, but more so depth, that you go into with this book, and any of the work you've done, like it's something you need to dive into. I mean, you talk about analog, you talk about stimulation fasting, and I strongly encourage people to pick up this book. But the last question I have for you, and this is related to a story that I said when I accidentally misquoted the title of your book during a conversation we had, and you were quick to correct me. And I want and so I said, Chris, your next book is called How to Be Calm. You go, no, How to Calm Your Mind. Yeah. So it brought me immediately to the thought of the advice that you get where you should never say to somebody, calm down, because it's like literally the opposite thing. The opposite will happen.
I didn't think of that. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah. So when I said How to Be Calm and you were quick to correct me, I know it's probably the title of the book was, but that's not something that is just so. I guess the point is it's not easily done, and you can't just quote be calm. The idea of the mind being calm is what you're getting at, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And we deserve a calm mind. It's not that it's a nice thing to have. We need a calm mind to deal with the world right now. There's so much changing. There's so many threats that we're constantly exposed to. There's the chronic stress that we choose to pay attention to. There's news, there's social media, and all this creates a confluence that leads to overwhelm. And we feel like we are not in the driver's seat of our own lives. Or at least this is how I felt at the beginning of the journey. Again, it's a spectrum. Everybody exists at a different place on. But you deserve a calm mind, right? You deserve the fortitude to deal with whatever comes your way. You deserve to have solid ground that you're standing on, and you deserve to have a capacity for accomplishing the things that you set out to do. You deserve to have the ability to accomplish more of whatever currencies you set out to savor your life. And I think that's, why focusing on the mind is such a powerful thing. If somebody says, hey, calm down, that's not advice we can take. But when you look at there is actual science for overcoming an anxious mind and moving towards the calm side of that spectrum, and by acting in accordance with it. We actually bring these ideas down to the surface layer of our life, to the not the minute, the moment, and can actually make progress towards this ideal ground to stand on. So I think the mind is the key here.
The key also is to pick up the book,
Oh,
How to Calm Your Mind.
I like
Presence and Productivity in Anxious Times. Chris, where can people pick up the book and where can they keep up with you and your work?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for having me on the pod once more. Third time, hopefully, is the charm. Well, we're going to have to do one of these when I don't have something to promote.
Yeah,
so we can just hang out.
It feels like it's a late night talk show every time we get together. This latest book is...
Yes. Out of anything I've ever written and anything I've ever created, I am most proud of this book. And I don't say that to sell you on it. This journey has helped me immensely. It's changed my life legitimately. And so I hope you'll consider picking up a copy. How to Calm Your Mind, wherever books are sold. I read the audiobook myself, which was a lot of fun. And yes, now out in bookstores anywhere. I think we're up to 10 languages as well. So if you live international, I say internationally, but there is no geographic center of gravity in the world. If you live in a non-Western English country, chances are it's in your preferred language if you have one that isn't English. So yeah,
and
thank you so much for listening.
Right? ChrisBailey.com.
Oh yeah, the website, chrisbailey.com.
Excellent. And
by the
way, we already had, just as we wrap up, somebody who's been paying attention and listening to our conversation that's a member of TimeCrafting Trust Premium has picked up a copy of the book. They just let us know.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Chris, thanks so much for taking time to have a productive conversation with me today.
Thank you, Mike Vardy.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of the live stream. Edward, thanks for picking up the book.
Yeah, thank you. I legitimately am... Recording stopped. I am legitimately very proud of this.
We're going to wrap up the stream now. Thanks to everybody for watching. This will be up live for you to watch, or the recording won't be live because we just did it. Thanks again for being part of it. We'll see you later. All right, I'm going to end the stream.
Peace. Bye, everybody.
All right, you and I are now. How was that?